The Death God's Daily Troubles by MagicalDucky. Chapter 16. A smile is worth 1,000 words, but a picture of my sister is priceless. Solaria, edge of the Middle District, 7th Squad Barracks. Aria's point of view. We're almost there, Kai. My cheerful voice rang out as I walked down the familiar yet sparsely populated road, holding a large box of armor in my hands. And I couldn't help but have a beaming smile on my face as I heard the sound of Kai's steady footsteps behind me. We made our way out of the crowded shopping district and into the Middle District a while ago on our way back to the barracks, and it was currently almost noon. After a few moments, the familiar sight of a large metal gate greeted me as I came to a stop and took a deep breath. All right, Arya. I know today's been a great day so far. The sun's shining in the sky, it's nice and warm outside, and the cool breeze feels refreshing when it blows on your face. And you finally got your brand new sword, too. And I quickly whirled around to sneak a quick peek at Kai before I immediately turned back to face my gate again. I looked down at the box I was holding in my hands with a slight blush as it began to spread across my face. Would this count as a date with Kai? I mean, he's just helping me out, moving some equipment, but we are alone together, aren't we? We walked through the town together. We're probably going to have lunch later after this, too, so isn't this just a date? Well, anyway, even if it is, you can't let it show on your face. I don't know who's here at the barracks today, but you definitely can't let them see you smiling like an idiot. Come on, Arya, you have a reputation to keep. Just act like usual. Think about work or something. Ugh, I can't do it. This stupid smile just won't come off my face. I dropped the box at my feet with a loud thump. As the armor inside clanked around, my hands squirmed all around my face as I tried desperately to force it from a smile back into a neutral expression. But despite my efforts, my face would just instantly revert back into the same goofy smile every time. After a few moments, I just gave up trying to manually make my face return to a blank expression, so I took another deep breath while trying to calm myself down before suddenly I heard the sound of Kai's voice from behind me. What's wrong, Arya? Did you forget your keys or something? My heart rate began to speed up as I heard the sound of another thump, followed by some more clanging before I felt Kai's hand softly touch my shoulder. My hands immediately shot back up and covered the bottom half of my face as I spun around to face him with a blush a few shades redder than before. Kai stared at me with a concerned look on his face, and I averted my line of sight into the ground after making eye contact with him for a moment. No, seriously, what's wrong? What do you mean, what's wrong? You're what's wrong right now. How am I ever going to return to normal if you keep making my heart rate skyrocket like this? We stood there in awkward silence as I stared at the ground before speaking out in a quiet voice. Well, because I just got my new sword along with some other reasons, I'm a little too happy right now, and I can't wipe this dumb grin off my face no matter what I do. Oh, is that it? I thought you were in serious pain or something with how suddenly you dropped the box. Anyway, you're happy right now, right? So you're a person, not a rock. Just express it instead of bottling it up. Who cares if you're smiling or not? Well, maybe it doesn't matter to you, but I have a reputation to keep around here. I'm the Knight's captain. I'm not supposed to be grinning like an idiot. I'm supposed to be stoic and resolute. Even if you're supposed to be serious normally, it's just a smile. It's not like everyone will think less of you for smiling every once in a while. Will they? Even back in Delhurst, you were never too serious unless it was in a fight. I mean, I guess you could have been seen as stoic, but that was just because everyone was too scared to talk to you. What did you do to start the charade this time? Well, the first day the new recruits came in, some of them got a little conceited and pissed me off. One even challenged me to a duel for this position as captain. So I beat them all up to show them who was boss, but after that I've been treating them decently, and at least I think I have. Well, at the very least, it looks like you haven't changed a bit since our days in Delhurst. You might not actually be a rock, but apparently your social skills sure are at that level. What do you mean by that? Back in Delhurst, you were just as much of an outcast as me, weren't you? Kai took a seat on top of the boxes of equipment he placed on the floor earlier and let out a sigh, while I crossed my arms and pouted at him with a slightly annoyed look on my face. After a moment, I looked back at him and opened my mouth to say something, but the moment I did, he cut me off. Oh, well, there you go. Looks like you're back to normal, Miss Stoic and Resolute. Night, Captain. Now, where do you want me to put all this stuff? Huh? I held my face in my hands with some slight disbelief, but after a moment I confirmed that my face was back to the neutral expression again. Oh, you're right anyway. Just put all the stuff over in the training room. Here, let me open the gate for you. I watched Kai pick up the stack of boxes again, and a warm, fuzzy feeling filled my chest as I unconsciously smiled at him again. Thanks, Kai. Crap! Well, just think of this as your subordinates learning about the new side of you, I guess, huh? It'll promote friendship? Solaria, Edge of Middle District, 7th Squad Barracks. Kyle's point of view. A few minutes passed as I sat there taking in the scenery while Arya finally managed to plaster a stoic expression on her face again. I stopped staring at the dojo-style barracks building and hopped off the stack of boxes I was sitting on as Arya opened the gate before picking up the box she dropped on the floor earlier. All right, follow me, Kai. Sure. I picked up my own stack of boxes and let out a small yawn as Arya led me through the open gate and down the small path leading up to the front door of the barracks. She pushed open the door with her leg, and a slightly familiar sight of a large but quaint lobby room greeted the senses as I made my way over to the hallway on the right side of the building before calling out to Arya, who was closing the door behind us. If I remember, the training room was this way, right? Yeah, just go straight and it's over to your right. Okay. I walked out into the courtyard with a faint smile as a breeze blew past my face and I turned to my left to see the garden. The sunlight shining in beautifully illuminated the pond and the garden in the middle of the courtyard. It was just like the first time I saw it, but this time there was an extra. In the middle of the courtyard was a young woman crouched down by the garden. She had medium-length blonde hair that reached down to past her shoulders, and her skin was slightly tanned with her light brown eyes that had a lively atmosphere to them. Her attire consisted of a white military uniform with black trim and yellow buttons. But she had a small watering can in her hand, and she tended to the garden while humming a tune with a smile on her face. It seemed like she noticed me right after I walked into the courtyard, though, because she looked up to me and made eye contact with me, awkwardly, for a moment, before she got up and called out to me. Excuse me, who are you? I'm Kyle. The girl stared at me in confusion, but after a moment she placed the watering can on the floor and walked over with a suspicious look on her face. So is there something you need in the 7th Night Squad? I'm just here to drop off some stuff. A delivery? Who's it for? Well, technically it's for you. For me? The suspicious look on the girl's face flashed with a hint of surprise for a split second before immediately shifting into a serious expression. I didn't order anything, though. Please stop lying and tell the truth. Otherwise, I'll have to apprehend you for trespassing. She took a few steps towards me, and it looked like she was about to attack when Arya walked into the courtyard hallway behind me and saw me standing still. What's wrong, Kai? Captain Arya, careful. There's a suspicious intruder here. Intruder? What are you talking about? Did you do something stupid again, Kai? Why did it just default to it being my fault? I just walked into the courtyard. I didn't do anything. Huh? The girl in the military uniform immediately dropped her fighting stance, and the confusion on her face was back in full force as she stared at me and Arya standing next to each other. Arya, did you tell them I was going to be here helping you pick up new equipment today, right? Oh, sorry, I forgot. I stared at Arya for a second before letting out a defeated sigh and turned to the girl in the uniform as Arya called out to her. Lillian, it's okay. He's not an intruder. He's my friend who's helping pick up our new equipment from the blacksmith. Well, like I said before, my name's Kai. It's nice to meet you. I'm so sorry, Sir Kyle. I stood there as the girl in the military uniform started rapidly bowing to me with a panicked look on her face. And it was only after a few minutes, when we finally got her to calm down, that she introduced herself to me, albeit with a guilty look in her eyes. My name is Lillian Leonora. It's nice to meet you once again. I'm so sorry about accusing you before. And I'm telling you, it's okay. It's not okay. I almost attacked an innocent person who was just trying to help. Not to mention, you're mannerless. I could have ended up seriously hurting you. So she's the 12th Night Captain's cousin, huh? Well, at least she seems pretty well-mannered for being a member of such a wealthy family. A little too well-mannered, even. I thought she'd be a lot more snobbish. I let out a dry chuckle as Arya walked past me towards the training room. We can talk about all this later. Let's just put this stuff down first. No problem, Captain Arya. Lillian quickly gave a traditional Radion Knight salute to Arya before turning to me with a determined look on her face. Sir Kyle, let me carry some of this for you. Helping you out is the least I can do to make up for my blunder earlier, as both a noblewoman and a knight. Yeah, that's all right. We're just dropping this off in the training room. Even so, I insist. Lillian pumped her fists together, and she stared at me with a stubborn glint in her eyes. I let out a sigh as I realized she wasn't going to give up so easily, and put down the boxes with a thump before handing her one. Fine, here then. Make sure you get a good grip. I took the top box off the stack and held it towards Lillian as she stood in front of me. You can give me more, it's okay. Even if I don't look like it, I'm still a knight. I'm sure I can at least carry one more than a mannerless civilian. Well, just make sure you get a hold of this one first. It's kind of heavy. Lillian stretched out her arms and accepted the first box from my hands with gusto. But the moment I let go, the box in her hands plummeted down as she almost fell over with a shriek. Ah! See, I told you. I looked at her with a dry smile on my face as she strained a bit to hold on to it before saying a small chant to activate her body-strengthening magic. May the well of strength flow through my body strengthening. A moment later, she stood back up again and put a fake smile on to try and act tough, while a bit of sweat dripped down her forehead. See, no problem. Here, hand me another one. I think this'll be okay. Just one box off for me is enough. Thank you, Miss Lillian. Wait, I swear I can help. Give me another box, Sir Kyle. I picked up the other two boxes again and caught up with Arya as Lillian scrambled to our side while rambling about how she could help more. After a moment, we finally reached the door to the training room, and Lillian ran in front of us to open the door. Here, let me help, Captain Arya. Lillian pushed against the door with her leg. It opened up slowly to reveal a training room. About 5 large windows lined the wall on each side of the room, and there seemed to be several practice weapons sprawled out on the wooden floor or leaning against the walls, while directly across from the entrance was another large door that opened up into a yard outside. Standing in the middle of the room was a man doing practice swings with a 2-handed battle axe, which was almost as tall as him. He had short, light brown hair, along with blue eyes, and he was also dressed in the same white military uniform that Lillian was wearing. Lillian entered the room first with a confident smile on her face, before Arya walked in right after her, while I trailed in last. However, as we entered the room, the man seemed to have noticed us. He stopped doing his practice swings before looking over at Arya with a surprised expression while scrambling to do a sloppy knight salute. When did you get here, Captain Arya? Oh, there you are, Eltane. I just arrived. Where's everyone else? Arya walked over to the corner of the room and placed the box in her hands down on the floor with a thump. Lillian ran over and did the same thing as she spoke to Arya. I think Edwards and Charlotte are out right now, and the rookie's with his friends today, so it's just me and Eltane here. Is there something important you needed them for, Captain Arya? Not really. If they're not here, they can just pick up their new equipment when they get back. The man put his axe against the wall as Arya finished talking, and he walked over to us with a confused look on his face as he stared at the boxes on the floor. Wait, new equipment? When did we get this? I just picked it up from the blacksmith earlier. The new gauntlets you wanted should be in one of those boxes, Eltane. Kai, just leave your box over here next to mine. I'll go grab something to open them with. Sure. Arya left the training room while I put down the rest of the boxes in the corner, too, as the man turned to Lillian with a confused look on his face. By the way, Lillian, who's this? Eltane, this is Sir Kyle. He helped us bring in all the new equipment back from the barracks. Sir Kyle, this is Eltane. He might be a bit, weird sometimes, but trust me, he's a good guy on the inside. Lillian introduced me to the man with a wry smile on her face, and he stood there for a second before extending his arm out with a friendly smile for a handshake. Nice to meet you, Sir Kyle. I'm Eltane Redison. You can just call me Eltane, though. Weird. I mean, he seems pretty normal to me. Kind of a nice guy, even. Nice to meet you, too. Also, Sir Kyle feels a bit stiff, so just call me Kai. It's fine. You can call me Lillian, too. I smiled at Eltane and Lillian as I accepted the handshake. A warm, friendly atmosphere filled the room. But it didn't last long. As the moment Eltane and I finished shaking hands, he walked up close to me with a grave look on his face. Lillian stared at him with a demoralized look on her face as a passionate fire lit up in his eyes before he spoke to me with a serious tone in his voice. All right, now that the introductions are over with, Kai, I need to show you something really important. Huh? I stared at Elaine with a puzzled smile as Lillian let out a defeated sigh in the background. I watched in bewilderment as Elaine reached inside the inner fold of his uniform jacket and pulled out a small slip of what seemed to be paper. He showed it to me. On the small slip of paper was a picture of a young girl that looked similar to Elaine. She looked like she was around the same age as my students, and she had a head of brown hair tied into twin tails, along with blue eyes that were the same shade as Elaine's, too. Now, Kai, tell me what you think of this girl here. Elaine stared at me with a ferocious glint in his eyes as I started getting more and more creeped out. Well, she looks very, nice. Goddamn right. Just look at how cute she is. Her eyes are as blue as a vast open sky. You could lose yourself staring into them. And her hair flows smoother than the finest silk. Could I ask you who she is? She is my pride and joy. My one and only little sister, Lucy Redison. Isn't she the cutest you've ever seen? I can say with absolute certainty that nobody in this entire world is cuter than my little Lucy. She is a pure angel, and mere mortals like us don't deserve her, but she's kind enough to let us stay around her anyway, so I'll make sure that at least that the people around her are good. If anyone thinks they can mess with her, they'll have to go through me first, understand? Oh, I see. So she's a super cis I glanced past Eltane with a dazed smile and locked eyes with Lillian, who was panicking a bit as Eltane finally took a step back and returned to his friendly smile from before. Lillian walked up to me with a sorry expression and apologized for the incident, as Eltane stared at the picture of his sister just a little bit before putting it back into the inner fold of his uniform jacket. Sorry about what happened with Eltane. He's like this with everyone he meets at first, but I swear he's still a good guy. Just a little bit obsessed with his sister. How did I just know there was going to be at least one weirdo here? I mean, I can understand loving your family, but this is a little too far, isn't it? If Eltane is this much of a sister complex, everyone within Lucy's vicinity will probably have to watch out for their lives. I think this constitutes a little more than obsessed. Yeah, you could say that. Lillian gave me a dry laugh as the door opened again and Arya walked back in. She didn't have her new sword on her anymore, but had a crowbar in her hands instead. All right, here we go. Arya walked over and pried one of the boxes open as we gathered around to see what was inside. Lillian glanced around before she pulled out a couple of daggers from it with a smile, whereas Eltane walked over to another box and pulled out a pair of metal gauntlets with a strange metal square in the back, into which he promptly mounted two pictures of Lucy that he pulled out from his jacket. I did my best to ignore Eltane hugging the pair of gauntlets beside me as I watched Arya pry open a box that she was carrying earlier and toss the crowbar aside before lifting a few pieces of light metal armor out. Lillian and Eltane gave her some space once they got their equipment and tested out their new stuff in the background, as I walked over to Arya with a curious expression. Did you get a new set of armor too? Yeah, I don't really wear armor all that much anymore since we stopped adventuring, but since some parts of my old armor are broken, it doesn't hurt to have a new set just in case I need it. Here, hold this while I try it on. Arya handed me everything she was holding except one gauntlet, which she wore on her right arm, before gripping her hand a few times to test out how easy it was to move. After that, she started taking pieces from me one by one and trying them on until she was only missing the chest plate. The shiny new set of armor consisted of 2 shoulder pads, gauntlets that were up to her elbows, a pair of metal boots that went up to her knees, and finally the chest plate that I was still holding. Arya grabbed the chest plate from my hands and tried to put it on before realizing she couldn't completely reach behind her back with her shoulder plates on. She turned to me with an embarrassed look on her face and handed the chest plate back to me before asking me for my help. Kai, I can't reach with the rest of my armor on. Could you help me strap on the last piece? This is why you always put the chest plate on first. I know it's been a while, but you're still technically an A-rank adventurer, aren't you? This is like the basic of the basics. I got too excited to try on everything and I forgot, okay? You're not exactly some expert adventurer either. You're a B-rank adventurer, aren't you? Anyway, it's not like it'll kill you to help me out this one time, will it? All right, I'm sorry, Miss Crimson Rose. Won't a famous A-rank adventurer like you have some mercy on a poor support character like me? Don't call me that embarrassing name again, or I really will make you suffer this time. I let out a light chuckle as Arya turned around and hugged the chest plate against her chest while she pouted with an embarrassed blush on her face. I tightened the leather straps on the back of the chest plate and tugged on them lightly to see if they were in good before taking a step back. All right, should be okay now. Arya stopped hugging her chest plate and let go before slightly flailing her limbs around and sending out a few punches and kicks in the air to test the armor. After a few moments, she turned to me and faintly smiled before starting to take off her gauntlets. Yep, fits perfectly. Thanks, Kai. No problem. I smiled back at Arya as she placed her gauntlets back into the box before turning around to see Altaine and Lillian staring and pointing at me with a shocked look in the corner of the room. They both looked slightly pale and whispered intently to each other as I walked up to them with a confused look on my face. What's wrong? You two okay? Altaine and Lillian stared at each other for a moment before each of them grabbed one of my shoulders and dragged me outside as Lillian called out to Arya in a shaky voice. Good, Captain Arya. We're going to borrow Kai here for a few moments. Once all 3 of us were in the courtyard hallway outside the training room, Altaine and Lillian cornered me against the wall as they both stared at me for a moment before Lillian spoke up with a serious tone in her voice. Kai, who exactly are you? Me? I'm Arya's friend. There's no way you're just a friend. You're definitely more than that. More? Well, I'm also a professor at the Royal... No, I mean, what's your relationship with Captain Arya? How do you know her? Oh, well, that's what you meant. We used to be partners back when we were both adventurers. Wait, adventurers how? I don't mean to be rude, but how could you have been an adventurer? You're a manaless, aren't you? Well, you see, I was really more of a supporter than the actual adventurer. Back when we were in a party together, Arya basically did all the fighting, and I just sat in the back and took care of everything else, like cooking the food and setting up the camp. But even disregarding your eligibility as an adventurer, you have to at least be a little bit more than just ex-party members. I've never seen Captain Arya smile before. I can't even think of a single time she showed us even a hint of a smile, no matter what we did. Right, Altaine? Yeah. It's like talking to a rock. Until just now, I was 100% certain that she was incapable of showing any emotion besides anger. Her face didn't even budge an inch when I showed her every one of my top 50 pictures of Lucy last week. I'm more surprised that Arya managed to sit through all of that with a blank expression instead of immediately glaring at you with disgust. Altaine held his chin up and nodded repeatedly to affirm his own thoughts as I stared at him with a creeped-out expression before Lillian cleared her throat and put the conversation back on track. Anyway, the point is that we've never seen her even show any emotion, even remotely close to happiness. So how did you manage it? Yeah, well, what did you do? Altaine and Lillian stared at me with curiosity and started slowly closing in on me before I leaned against the wall and let out a sigh and muttered to myself, I didn't think Arya would go this far with a dumb facade again. Wait, facade? What are you talking about? The curiosity on Altaine and Lillian's faces was replaced with confusion as they took a step back and looked at me for an explanation. Crap. I didn't mean to let it slip like that. Well, should I just tell them? Nah, screw it. They already heard it, and even if one of them is a little strange, as long as it doesn't involve his little sister, it looks like he's pretty normal. Anyway, they both seem like they actually care about Arya, and it'll probably help her to get along with them better if she doesn't have to keep pretending to be emotionless. I think that she deserves at least that much. More than I do, anyway. I closed my eyes and took a deep breath before facing Eltaine and Lillian again, as I asked them a question with a soft tone in my voice. So, how much do you guys actually know about Arya? Has she ever told you anything about herself? Eltaine and Lillian looked at each other for a moment as they racked their memories before turning to me with serious faces. Well, besides the fact that she's insanely strong, almost nothing. I can still remember the first day we met her, and she beat us all up because Edward challenged her to a duel, and that made her angry. But nowadays she treats us pretty well, and as long as we listen to her, she hasn't personally told us much about herself. I heard from my cousin that one of the other knights' captains besides the head captain know much about her. It's kind of hard to hold a personal conversation with her, too. Right, Eltaine? Yeah, feels like it's impossible to find something to talk about that isn't related to training. I don't think that even Edward has had an actual non-work related conversation with Arya yet. So, she really hasn't given you anything at all to work with, huh? All right, well, you two seem like you actually care about becoming her friends, so I'll tell you about Arya if you want. But promise me, you two will keep what I tell you a secret. Will do. Swear that no one will hear a word from us. Yeah, I won't tell anyone. At the very least, I'm a man of my word. I smiled kindly at Eltaine and Lillian as they made their declarations with confidence before I began to narrate what I knew about Arya's past. A few minutes passed as they listened to me intently while I told them about how I met Arya, her promises with her father and Max, our days adventuring in Delhurst, her fight against the dragon, and what happened once she returned to the capital. When I finally finished, it was silent, except for the sounds of a gentle breeze and some sniffling from Lillian. A few tears rolled down Lillian's face before she wiped them off, and Eltaine stood there with a somber expression before Lillian's sad voice rang out, followed by Eltaine's solemn one. I never would have thought so much happened to Captain Arya. I can't believe she made it through all that. We're about the same age, too, but I wouldn't know what to do if all that happened to me. Yeah, I always knew Captain Arya was strong, but it looks like she's even stronger than any of us thought. I can't even imagine what it would be just to travel alone along the edges of the Empire like that, especially if my father had just passed away. A gloomy atmosphere began to spread through the courtyard hallway as Eltaine and Lillian stood there, lost in their thoughts for a moment, before I smiled at them with a tint of melancholy. My line of sight moved up to the clear blue sky behind them as a sense of nostalgia overtook me, and I started to talk in a gentle voice. You know, when I first met Arya, I thought she was just a violent woman by nature. She and I would always argue over this and that, and she would even hit me sometimes when I got her really angry. But I still stayed with her, even through all the troubles. At first, I didn't know why I did. Honestly, I could have just left her and went on my own way. But eventually, as the days passed by, I finally realized why. It was because whenever I saw Arya, it was like I was looking back at my past self again. She was alone without a single person by her side, just like I was. I know what it's like to lose someone you love. It's painful. It's cold. And the only thing you can feel is that anger and despair. The dead don't come back, no matter how hard you try and change that. And eventually, one day, you realize that you're finally alone in this world. I hated it. I hated every second that I saw Arya like that. I hated every second that I saw her bottle up her loneliness until it turned into anger and violence because all it did was remind me of my past. I didn't want to see her walk down the same path I did, clawing desperately just to try and grasp that faint happiness again. Because at the end of that path, there is no happiness. There's just emptiness. An emptiness that hurts even harder than losing someone you love. So I decided that I would try and save Arya. just like someone else did a little too late for me. I tried my hardest, but I don't think that Arya's change was completely because of me. There was only so much I could do, so there's at least one thing that I have to say to you. Thank you for sticking by her side. Every time I see her now, she seems happier, and I'm sure that she enjoys your company, even if she's not the best at expressing it. I bowed deeply to Altaine and Lillian as I finished my monologue, but what I saw after I finished bowing, it was a scene of Altaine and Lillian uncontrollably crying their eyes out. Don't worry, Kai. We'll make sure that Captain Arya stays safe and happy. Yeah, I swear that from now on, every day that she's with us will be fun ones. You too, Kai. You're welcome here any time. And you and Captain Arya deserve at least that much after all you've been through. And in fact, Lillian, do we have anything to do today? Nope, Edward and Charles are taking care of the squad's duties today. Perfect. We should just start having fun right now. Let's go. We can all get lunch together and then go sightseeing or something. Huh? Great idea, Altaine. You know what? Lunch is on me today. We can even go to one of my favorite restaurants. You two wait for me outside. I'll go get Captain Arya right now. Lillian wiped away her tears with a small handkerchief before running back inside to the training room with a determined smile on her face. I watched her run off as Altaine grabbed my arm and dragged me with him to the main lobby while he rubbed his face dry with the sleeve of his uniform. It's okay, you two don't have to do this. Just doing what you usually do is enough. Now don't worry, Kai. This will be what we usually do from now on anyway. Come on, we're going to make sure Captain Arya can smile again.